these days, I'm gonna like type out the update notes before we start the recording, and it'll be great.
All right. Welcome everyone to the every 2 week sync meeting from the IPLD team. It's June the 24th in UTC days. And what do we have? So normally we start with a quick round of updates, and then we talk about whatever issues you want to talk about. I start first because I've written down my notes already. So I forgot to put it there. I played around a bit also. I will also put it there later. I spent a bit time also on WebAssembly because, so the background story is the IPFS team is someone from the IPFS team has ported the Ribbon chunker from JavaScript to assembly script to compile it to WebAssembly. And we had a native C implementation, and the WebAssembly stuff is way slower than the C stuff. And it was just out of interest because I found a blog post about compiling C directly to WebAssembly without mscripting. So I just also wanted to play around with it. So I just wanted to port the original C version to see if it's any faster. And so the result was it's not any faster. It just has the same performance basically. Yeah, because it seems that assembly script is quite good at creating the WebAssembly code. It also is not that complex, but it was just, yeah, to see how it works out. It was a nice exercise. And besides that, I worked again on my geo stuff, the stack stuff. So in previous weeks, I got working that I can load it into IPLD, and now there is they have an interface called Stack Browser, and I today managed that I actually get so normally they use JSON, that I get actually an object from the IPLD store, and then just get the object directly into their web application, and it could load the data, and that's pretty exciting because now I need to figure out how to follow links and so on, but it's a good start. And it really seems I can just use their browser and just change a few lines of code and it will work, which is pretty cool. And also, I think a good way to see, or like basically what we are after is that we see if IPLD actually works for real world use cases. And it would be pretty cool to see if I can really get this working with only minimal code changes. Yeah. And then while I was doing this, so this Stack browser is using Parcel Bundler, which is just a bundler for JavaScript, and it's just so bad. I spent a few hours on trying to get it compiled with our libraries until I found out that it doesn't transpile node modules, and there is no way to tell it, please transpile the dependencies into your bundle for certain browser versions or certain ECMAScript versions. And it's just, I don't know, and it's really by design. So you can find open issues, it's by design. So my conclusion is if you build a project, just use Webpack. Even if Webpack is horrible, at least you can get it working. So Parcel just, yeah, I think it works for small projects, but not if you have any dependencies that doesn't probably transpile. Or rather, you can tell it to transpile because we do transpile, but not in their way. Anyway, it took me a few hours, therefore I'm mentioning it because, yeah, it's, yeah, horrible. Anyway, I think that's all I have. Yeah. So, Eric, do you want to go next?
I have so much stuff. So this was a really hectic and exciting week or two. partially just because I posted tons and tons of stuff that I had been sitting on in like a 98% completion, and now they're just all hoisted into GISTs and PRs in various places. I'll need to go back and drop more links into our crypt pad for this. So the selectors draft is hoisted, and that's not in a PR to the specs repo yet because there's a bunch of examples that need to be updated, but the schema itself is pushed somewhere. I think those include a completely reasonable recursion system, and there are still some to-dos around a conditional language, but the recursion parts themselves seem to be correctly shaped out, so that's cool. I got to sit down with some people from the Filecoin project who have had these desires for selectors for ages and get like some very concrete examples of use cases out of them. So now we can like diff against those. And it turns out what they do want is one of the harder things that we have planned to support. They have not just recursion, but they have nested recursion in their traversals. But we should be able to do it. So that's cool. I hosted a POC code of selectors to a branch on the Go IPLD Prime stuff. That's a very skeletal implementation of some of the more basic stuff, but it gets the ball rolling. It sounds like from some other conversations I've had out of band in the last week or two that we're going to have Hannah maybe come over and help out even more with fleshing out the rest of the selectors code. She basically said off the record that she doesn't want to deal with any of the spec stuff, but if the spec is good, then she's perfectly happy to deal with the rest of it. So like, if Hannah was here, thank you. There's another round of UnixFS v2 schema draft that is in a PR. So I asked on some of our other communication channels how people feel about pushing drafts that are kind of opinionated like that one into the repo. I put that file there with like timestamps and date stamps with the idea of communicating that it is a draft made at like a snapshot in time, and it's meant to be self-consistent, but not necessarily to live forever, and not necessarily to be on a path to being a final spec. So I would like to hear how people feel about that as just a way of gathering notes. But I did also have a nice conversation with Michael on the basis of that, and I think we basically said, yeah, this is close. And so he's been doing a bunch of other Spike stuff with the JS implementation of some of the ideas for UnixFS v2-ishness. And he had started to accumulate some interesting logic about like how to split up files. And so we're looking at that, and we're looking at the schema draft, and we're kind of thinking we can meet in the middle here by putting any of the interesting chunking logic, like basically anything that's an if or above in power level, as long as we put that inside the boundary that's cut out for an advanced data layout, or maybe we'll name them composites, whatever we do there. As long as we can put that inside that boundary, then that lets us, it's a nice place to limit the abstraction. So we'll be able to change our mind about that in constructive ways later, and it'll be good, I hope. So with all that stuff, I'm thinking about shifting some time back to schema work, and ideally trying to get a skeleton of that we could think about beginning to power CodeGen and Go with. And somebody else from another team, Kabuxu, has apparently done some CodeGen work before and was saying he might like to jump in and do some stuff with that. So I'm going to try to figure out if that's possible to do in the near future. Yeah, it was a week. I think that's the end of my list.
Cool, thanks. And next is Rod.
Okay. So I've been in interesting land of functional programming community that talks a lot about persistent data structures, which are really just immutable data structures. And they talk about them in the same way that we talk about data structures in IPLD. And they think about it in almost identical terms, which is really interesting. Like they do it for the same reasons, and they've got a lot of other concerns like optimizing for cache locality and all that sort of stuff. But otherwise, there's a lot to mine from that community. So that's been a really interesting journey, and currently working on implementing a vector, like a resizable array, basically something that you can push lots of elements to, and it's really efficient to address. Not very efficient when you take things off the front of it, but very efficient to put things on the end of it. And that's working out pretty well. It's got the algorithm's got a bunch of names, but it's essentially it's like a hamped without the hash, and it maps down to something that's very similar to what Jeremy did with Sharay. He's SHARRAY repo in his GitHub. I think if I pursue this thing further and get it to a spec, that it might be something that could map to what he's done in a certain form. So with certain defaults, it could produce what he's done. And I think I don't quite understand the motivation for it for his thing. It's to do with Filecoin Lite clients. I don't really understand that, but I believe Lua is involved, and so I think it's meant to be like very small and efficient or easy. But yeah, so I'll have to figure out more about what the motivation there is and how to align it to get that, as well as all the other benefits you can get from having this basically a very large array of IPLD ordered by index. Or maybe it's not quite close enough. I'll see. I mean, I don't quite understand the Go code in there, but enough to see that it's very similar. Anyway, that's been my main adventures for the past couple of weeks. I don't think I've got anything else notable to really include, so that's probably me.
Cool. Is there anything we want to discuss? I guess the only thing that comes to my mind is as I now spend time on actually using IPLD in the browser, I see that we really need to have, or like we should probably stick to the JSON at the DAG JSON we have, or something similar. So it's really like you would in the browser, you really want to have some JSON representation that is just like easily readable and parsable and just like to work with. Because like there's this spec out from Michael about a more advanced version, basically. But I think it's not like I think it's a cool thing, but I think it's not like, it might even be called DAG JSON, so I don't care about the names, but I think it's just something different. I think the current DAG JSON is pretty easy to work with, and I think we should keep something like this around, because yeah, it's just easy.
Similar. I thought that proposal for putting some more stuff in there was interesting, and like I feel like maybe someday we should explore one of those, but I'd rather just put it in a new codec, and I think it's a lot easier to do that than to expand the, for better or for worse, well battle tested DAG JSON.
Yeah. Cool.
Did you want to talk about protobuf named links removal?
Oh yeah, I can talk about, that's a good point. Yeah, because I was sending Eric an email, but anyway. Yeah. Okay, so the thing is, so the problem is that also to explain to the thousands of live stream watchers out there, so what we do is in UnixFS, you can address files just directly with the file path you are used to, but in IPLD it's stored differently. And if you use IPLD, you normally traverse, at this point, in the current version of IPLD, you traverse the data just the way it is laid out within your object. And now we have the problem that you want to traverse the DAG protocol buffers, which is the underlying thing for UnixFS, for IPFS, is that there are basically two ways to traverse the data. And what Alex was telling me, who was working on the JavaScript implementation of UnixFS, is that he doesn't ever use those named links, which was a surprise to me, to be honest. So the question is, should IPLD contain those named links at all? Or should we just remove them because they are a huge performance hit? So he did some benchmarking and it's like 8% of the time is just used in those, creating those named links. And now my question comes to Eric, because I guess the Go IPLDs thing has something similar, I guess, but I'm not sure how the Go implementation is doing it. So is it within the IPLD library or is it just like outside and they also do it somehow differently outside of IPLD?
I don't know.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I just saw your message about that moments before this call. I think that stuff is done in the old generation of IPLD libraries in Go. I think it's also, I should look before saying, but I'm pretty sure I remember looking at something like that before and being like, this does not look efficient. So, yeah. I'm not super sure what we will want to do about that in the future. I don't think, it seems like every time we've talked about what we want to do for the future of relationship between the existing DAG PB stuff and where we want to go in the future, it's involved acknowledging there's been a lot of weird details in the existing tag PB stuff, and maybe we should like fess up to the fact that it's basically UnixFS v1 in all users, and maybe just start doing things based on that admission. And then if anything, spec new protobuf general purpose usage at a later date. So yeah, wrapped with caveats of I don't know, and I'm going off the top of my head here. I feel like we should, it seems to me like we could be pretty flexible about what to do with these things, because it doesn't seem like there are many consumers of this API, and it seems like the ones that are consuming it are generally like giving it a funny look already anyway. So if we want to improve it, we should feel free, I think.
Yeah, so what we also started on the JavaScript side, or at least so there's a PR open to really change the API from DAG protocol buffers into just those things that UnixFS needs. So it's like for example, there were things that were asynchronous because of like how IPLD involved and so on. But now like protocol buffers doesn't need any of this asynchronous stuff. So we just removed it. So I guess we basically, so currently the plan is kind of, we just strip it down to the bare minimum because of course we need to maintain it for forever because of the UnixFS v1, but we want to make it as small as possible because, well, less code, less bugs, obviously. And I think the named links is also something that is just, I mean, it's certainly a cool thing. Like, yeah, it's a cool thing, but if no one's using it, yeah, there's no real point of keeping it if things still work afterwards. So I would lean towards removing them. And I mean, even if it turns out that it's a problem, we can just add them back. I mean, if we suddenly find out we break something, yeah. But so far, all my changes, so I've never heard anyone from the outside, or like I've never heard from anyone else using DAG PB outside of IPFS. So
yeah, as far as I know, basically every piece of code I've ever reviewed from outside of our group has been DAG JSON and not DAG PB. DAG PB is just too hard to work with, so nobody's
Yeah.
done it.
Okay. So so is the so can we conclude that we just go with removing the named links from IPLD?
I kind of feel like we should ask somebody else who was more involved in that at the time, because I'm okay with it, but I just am not super familiar with the history or the consequence. So I don't know. I don't want to be the final opinion on that.
Okay, but basically, okay. So I will take care of the stuff. So basically, I will. So from the IPLD team, currently the impression is we can just we are good to go to remove it. But I ask further people who have been involved previously to see if it is actually a problem or not. But from the IPLD side of things, we don't see any issues in removing it. Is this correct? Okay, cool. I'm even thinking about perhaps we can, like in JavaScript, it should be pretty simple to just put another, to build it on top, basically, as UnixFS does it. So if we want to like have some demos working or whatever, you need to include the DAG-PB named linked library or whatever it is. But this would be something that basically I would tell that we could build if we need it, and we hopefully never build it. That's would be my plan. Yeah.
The one other application I can think of anywhere near this area is Hector, in working on some cluster stuff, said to me that he definitely wants to maintain this ability to get an enumeration of links, all of the links in a block, basically, even if they're deeper in the object. And I told him, yeah, okay, we're just going to do that with a selector that happens to do that. And just going to make that that'll be a const selector in the library, so it's really easy to get at. There's a helper function pointing directly at it, and that'll be it.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, I guess the only problem that I could see on the JavaScript side is perhaps the IPLD Explorer, like the web UI stuff that they might use the name links for something. But I will check with Ollie if that's the case. But even those can be fixed. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and it still seems like you could do a functional transform that just gives the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, which is currently actually is, but but basically we remove it from the core, just put it somewhere else.
And instead of doing it all the time for usually no reason.
Yeah, which is currently the problem. And it will make the code so much easier. Like currently it's like, so I really don't like the DAG-PB code currently, but this makes things way simpler. Cool. Yeah. All right. Is there anything else?
I don't think so.
Maybe we should note that there has been a lot of discussion about advanced layouts. And this has been, or generics or whatever it is, this has been occupying a lot of our time, in discussion time anyway, over the past couple of weeks. Maybe I'll put some links in the doc to that, but there's been just discussion about where it fits, how it relates to schemas, how to do signaling, and all of those pieces. So there's very live discussions about those things, and I presume that in person in Barcelona, Eric, you and Michael have made interesting progress there. So
we talked about that the one that the UnixFS v2 draft highlighted, and it basically seemed good. So I think I actually got a little buy-in now on the idea of at least we certainly can use schemas for signaling. It might not be the only way, but it's a way. One of the things that's, I don't know, there's still definitely things up in the air, like as to where we stuff any parameters. My official stance is that I just don't even care. Like we could just not support parameters for advanced layouts at all. and just put that entirely inside the implementation name if we wanted to.
Yeah, that's fine by me.
But yeah. We should have a powwow about the naming thing. I don't know if a GitHub issue is like the greatest way to reach a final resolution on that. GitHub issues have this tendency to be comment forever, and you can't, like, there's no way to vote or signal consensus in a GitHub issue. It's just not a conversational mode that you can do in that technology, which is a continuing irritant to me.
Yeah, perhaps we can just do it at the next sync meeting. So again, like coming up with names or whatever. But like to me, it seems like the advanced layout stuff is still pretty like sounds pretty clean to me. So like anyway, but yeah, we can keep the discussion next week.
I started using the acronym ADL for advanced data layout in some of my personal notes, and then I caught myself. And I'm trying to debate if that's a case of what's the ASS acronym? Acronym serious. I'm trying to decide if that's a case of acronyms seriously suck or if it's actually like kind of it's nice. Anyway, yeah. We should make like a brainstorm, gather all of the crazy ideas we've ever had, document, and then do something.
Yeah.
Okay, I've collected a couple of links for the notes. One of them is Michael's one that where he calls it generics, and the other one is your issue, Eric, on signaling, referencing, and having an implementation.
Yeah,
I think those are the main areas of discussion.
Yeah. We did have some earlier rounds of chat in those other issues, and I have not re-synced those into my brain.
I think a lot of the meaty stuff comes out of Berlin when we did a lot of in-person stuff.
Yeah.
Those notes, something I should mention is in the IPLD/IPLD repo, there's a pull request still waiting for reviews with notes from Berlin. So I don't know, it'd be good if you guys could have a look at that. Just to capture that stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of PR and issue cleanup we should probably do at some point. One of the this isn't super on topic for our meeting in particular, but something that got a lot of discussion at the Team Week recently is an idea that I'm now kind of very pleased with and interested in, is this idea of having a lab notebook. The idea being that like some of these organizations that were known for doing good research in the past, like the Apollo stuff, people would have a lab notebook and you'd write things in it, and anybody else could come look at your lab notebook, but it's basically your lab notebook. So you put your ideas in it as they come to you. And that's it, right? There's no review process. It's just for the ideas. Which is kind of the same thing I did with one of those PRs about the draft spec thing. That doesn't need to go anywhere. I just wanted to put it somewhere and have it be coherent somewhere so you could link to it and look at it and start a conversation. Maybe crumple it up and throw it away like a dirty page in a dirty lab notebook, but at least briefly have it on paper. I don't know if I have any great ways in mind to like execute that strategy and like make it fit well within the substrate of Git, but I think it would be cool if we did more of that sort of stuff and then correspondingly closed a bunch of issues because they can live somewhere else. But that's, I don't know, that's a half-baked thought. Just throwing that out there for more.
So nobody had a concrete proposal for how a lab notebook would work for us.
No.
It's just an idea.
Yeah, just a thought.
I mean, we could use a GitHub wiki. Bit of a black hole, but they do exist.
Yeah, the tricky part of the UX of the thing is making sure that you can write into it, and that thing, I don't know, trying to figure out how to do this well is probably like an entire startup and a product. So I don't know, maybe I'll stop myself from thinking about it too much.
No, you're right though. I feel like there's both too many repos and too many issues, and also at the same time, not enough capturing of some of the things that are going on in our own heads, but also when we collectively talk. These meetings are a good place to get that stuff public, but there's still so much more context that's missing from this, and so I imagine. No, I know that people from the outside trying to come in and trying to get up to speed with what we're collectively thinking and talking about. It's probably going to be impossible just from what we put out in public. Even if you were to mine Slack for that stuff, it's just not going to be enough.
Yeah.
So we do need some way of capturing it. Like even yesterday, I was stumbling across some resources that were I just thought, this is amazing. But what do I do with it? Okay, I put it in my head, but I'd like to be able to drop a note somewhere that this might be interesting for other people in the future.
Yeah, I don't know how to do it. I can only think of examples of things that I think don't work, namely GitHub. It's when I try to do it for myself in like a localhost repo, I pretty much just use date stamped files really, really heavily, because that de facto causes like a sort of mark and sweep garbage collection, which I think is an important factor for not getting hung up trying to edit things, and thus makes it easier to emit new content. That lasts for any given project for like a year or so before it's so many files that I'm like, blow away the repo again. So that sort of works, but it doesn't perfectly work either. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it's something like to me it sounds something like a tiddly wiki, which is actually nice. Like kind of like like this. You can link things and so on, but yeah. Like I tried a few times to really like TiddlyWiki, but I don't. Like it's
close to try.
The concept sounds so good, but I don't know. Yeah. But it's on my to-do list for several years to build something like this. And also like perhaps like with IPLD, you could just put your notes into an IPLD object. And then,
maybe this would be one of the really cool applications we should try to spike out.
Yes.
I think there's going to be some people coming to the IPFS camp next week who have some interesting products in this direction too. So,
that's true. Yeah. Yeah, you should totally use the camp to kind of like asking people about their opinions about those things, like to just see if they have good ideas or tools.
Yeah. Or if we can convince them to build them for us.
Even better. Cool. Is there anything else we want to discuss?
Yeah, I'm done.
Cool. Then I close the meeting. Thanks everyone for attending and watching. And you guys see each other again in 2 weeks. I won't be there because we'll be on holidays for 2 weeks, starting the week after. So anyway, so I won't be here next week, but yeah. Cool. So see you then. Goodbye.
Ciao.
Stopping the live stream.